Rio Hondo Prep football is one of the best kept secrets in all of Southern California. As one of the smallest enrollments year in and year out, the Kares have won 14 CIF championships and have been one of the most successful programs throughout their history. Welcome to A Charge to Keep, the official podcast of Rio Hondo Prep football. And now, bringing you the latest news and content from his alma mater, a CIF champion in 2001. From the class of 2003, here's your host, Matt Ursima.
What is up, Rio Hondo Prep football fans? It is week 8 of the 2022 season, and although we didn't have a game last week to play as the boys were resting up and getting ready for their league matchups here to finish out the season, we're still going to have a podcast this week, a little pregame show, if you will. Last week, we heard from Jacob Blake. The week before, from John Lee, some notorious alumni from Rio Hondo Prep. And you guys told me a few weeks back that you really enjoyed some of my interviews that I've been having with coaches from the other team, things of that nature, get that outside perspective really for Rio Hondo Prep, right? So I couldn't do that this week, but what I was able to do was sit down and record with somebody that I think you guys will really enjoy. You'll enjoy his perspective on Rio Hondo Prep. Has a little connection to Care Youth League, we'll say, Boys Christian League, that is, as a former member. He's been on my Get Home Safe podcast before, usually around Christmas time. One of my good friends and mentors in the world of officiating, specifically football, Tracy McFate. He was a longtime assigner of the Foothill Citrus unit out here where I officiated on the, east side of the 605 freeway. The west side of the 605 freeway is the San Gabriel Valley Officials Association. So it will fill you in there a little bit more about that. But what I really appreciate about Tracy is that with over 40 years of high school football officiating experience, he also has many years of college football officiating experience, not just junior college, not just Division III, but also Division I. Back when he worked it, it was the Big West. Now you would maybe call it the WAC, or at one time, the Mountain West. You'd notice a lot of the teams there who were in the Big West back in the day, but Tracy's worked, Boise State and Fresno State and things of that, the schools of that nature, I should say. He's worked in the Coliseum before when there was some non-conference games with the USC. So he's done it all. He's seen a lot of football over his time, and he is really, to me, an expert in the local schools here. The perception does, with Rio Hondo Prep kind of coming in the mix, do they belong amongst the elite of the programs? I'm bringing on an impartial opinion here, someone that's not affiliated with any school, but has officiated and therefore had that non-impartial, opinion that we want to get. So you're going to hear a little bit about officiating today, but mostly about Tracy's experience over the years in seeing the various schools and the evolution of how each school has, has established their program. Maybe things behind the scenes that people don't think about, but that Rio does really, really well. Just things of that nature. Maybe a story or two in there as well. So when I started officiating football in 2007, Tracy was a very impactful person to me. He was not only the assigner, but he was in Glendora where I lived, and we went to the same church for a while. Just a guy that I felt I could ask anything to, and he's got some stories about his early days in Boys Christian League as a member of what is now Care Youth League, where he got his love of football. That all started playing in blue jeans and helmets and stuff. So I don't want to ruin too much of the interview. I'll let you guys enjoy this, but this isn't anyone associated with another school. There's not a ton of specific Rio Hondo Prep talk. It's just a different interview, and I think you guys will enjoy this. A little outsider perspective of the Rio Hondo Prep football program, and he will talk about other schools and programs, and if maybe Rio belongs amongst the elite in the discussions, and maybe flying under the radar. Does Rio prefer that over being in the spotlight? So it was a rather interesting conversation, and I'm going to have Tracy on again on my Get Home Safe podcast on right around Christmas time. It's always great hooking up with him around that time of year. But Tracy knows his stuff. He knows football. He knows officiating. He knows rules. He knows programs. This is not a guy you should just roll your eyes at. Oh, some referee coming on here. No, Tracy's been around the game a long time. and has been in big games and mentored me and a lot of other people. And we're going to talk about the current state of officiating a little bit too. We have some harsh words for that, for just like maybe fans do. So hopefully this gives you guys some insight. But again, Tracy, an outsider, if you will, at one time was in Boys Christian League, which is now Care Youth League, and went on to play football at Monrovia High way back when, and then 40 plus year of officiating high school and college football all around the West Coast and Southern California here. So not much of a preview today. We already talked about the Gold Coast League teams last week a little bit. They're undefeated, their records and such. Viewpoint this week. Truth be told, I'm recording this before week 7 actually comes out. So I wanted this ready for you guys next Wednesday when the podcast should be available 24 hours before kickoff, right? That's always my promise to you guys. So I may be out of town during that time. So I wanted to record this, make sure it was out nice and early. So I don't know what all the schools did in week 7, but you can go look that up for yourselves. We'll see if Brentwood beat Campbell Hall or vice versa. And Viewpoint, who did they play? No, excuse me. Viewpoint plays Campbell Hall in week 7, or they did anyway. And then Brentwood was off. So you can look at those updated standings, if you will, on Max Preps, but it'll be Viewpoint this week, and then Brentwood at home, and then Campbell Hall on the road. And then guys, this regular season's over. So I hope you guys are ready for a fast few weeks here. Lightning round, if you will. No more breaks, no more buys, no more canceled games, none of that stuff. Hopefully everyone is healthy. It's been 3 weeks since Rio Hondo played a game down in Orange County, beating the Savannah Rebels. And so hopefully everyone's healed up, blessing in disguise. And as I mentioned last week, Rio didn't play last week, but we are counting that game against Glendale that did not happen as a forfeit. So Rio Hondo is 6-0 for their 9-game season going into the final 3 games here. And I just couldn't be more excited to be there on the sidelines, to interview players, coaches, to get some videos, sights and sounds of what's going on with Rio Hondo Prep football. So be sure to continue to support that on the Charge to Keep various social media platforms and to the YouTube page. This thing's really blown up. People are watching and liking and subscribing. It's great. Let's keep this thing growing. Tell someone every week about the podcast, whether on YouTube or social media. Show them on the audio platforms. Hopefully they will follow and like us and be part of this program. Like everyone else has jumped on board here. I can't believe how many total plays we're getting on each episode. And I know Tracy isn't affiliated with Rio Hondo Prep, but I can assure you he has mad respect for Rio, as do a lot of other officials out in the San Gabriel Valley and the Foothill Citrus unit. People no longer have to be, wait, who's Rio Hondo Prep? People know, and word has gotten around over the years. It's taken a few decades, but Rio has the respect of not only the schools, other teams, but also officials as well. So you get that perspective today on the Charge to Keep podcast. All right, let's get right to our guests. No preview of the upcoming game. We already kind of did that last week, but we'll see. We got a tough game, a home game on Thursday night against the Viewpoint Patriots. I think I should have looked that up. Oh, well, we'll get to it. We'll get to the game. Thursday night football, Thursday night lights. Only 2 home games remaining, guys. Get to either Viewpoint this week or Brentwood next week. Otherwise, you got to watch Rio on the road or on the video here. So either way, it's all good. Let's get to my featured guest of the week to get a little perspective from someone who wore the stripes quite often and dealt with a lot of different schools in the area. Let's now be joined by my very good friend and mentor, Tracy McFate. Okay, now today our guest is Tracy McFate, someone who's going to offer us a little outsider perspective on Rio Hondo Prep football. I know a lot of fans have enjoyed hearing from opposing coaches and their perspective of Rio. So we're going to get a little perspective today, someone who officiated for a great amount of time. Tracy officiated high school and college football for 40 years, was the high school assigner for the Foothill Citrus unit, and worked Division I football as well. He is now retired, living in Las Vegas, Henderson to be specific. What's going on, Mr. McFate?
Matt, good to see you. Good morning from Southern Nevada.
Beautiful. Well, Tracy, you and I have a podcast every year on my Get Home Safe podcast right around Christmas time, which we will still do. But this is a fun one here to maybe talk a little high school football.
Looking forward to it. Absolutely. We're right now in the heart of the season.
Definitely. I recently saw you last week as we went to the Claremont South Hills game. Rio, unfortunately, had their game canceled. And so I was free. You were in town. So we went and watched some of our buddies officiate the Claremont game. It was always great seeing you.
Yeah, that was fun. In those 2 hours, I think you and I solved every problem around. So, we're good for another couple of months, I guess.
Exactly. And Tracy, you were a big mentor to me when I started officiating back in 2007. You were the assigner. You were a Glendora guy. We ran into each other at the Glenkirk Church there in Glendora. I came and watched as many games as possible. And you saw that I was hungry as far as officiating goes and threw me on the field a few times.
I remember a game that we were working at District Field with my good friend Joe Bernansky, who took ill, and Matt Hersman just happened to have his gear in his car, and we threw you out there on a Thursday night game with South Hills and somebody. If Joe and I were working it, it must have been a big game.
South Hills to Sorrow. And yes, I had my gear in the car and I was ready to go. And hey, kid, you're in. It was great.
Well, that's when Tesoro had like 110 players or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
I remember the first thing I think I saw you at a game was my first year. I had just worked Thursday afternoon, my first high school game, Damien High School. And then I went that night to watch Covina District Field. You were on the game. I walked in the locker room to meet the crew. And I think your first words to me, hey guys, this is Matt Hersman. He's going to work his first varsity game tomorrow night. And I went, wait, what? Excuse me? Hello. And you were, because I had been going to varsity games. Word had gotten around that I was soaking everything up. And so you assigned me my first varsity game Friday night, the next day. Gary at Gladstone at Citrus College. I remember it well, and I'll always cherish that memory.
Hey, it was their biggest game of the year.
Got that right. But no, you and other guys really taught me if you want to do this thing well, you got to get out and watch games, be on the sidelines. And I was like, are you kidding me? Thursday nights, Friday nights, I'm there. I got nothing else going on. I'm all in for high school football.
And you and I have touched on it, but the sense of entitlement that's out there now, you can really see it on the field. You see mistakes that are happening out there that are basic mistakes, and it doesn't seem to faze the officials. They keep on repeating the same things quite a bit. As you were coming up, as I were coming up, was coming up, you're going to make a mistake. You just don't want to make that same mistake twice. And we're seeing that over and over again. And I have a lot of still discussions with the current assigner, Luther Wilson, with the current instructional chairman, Art Andrade, and it's just missing something. It's like, what's the minimum qualifications I need to go out in the field, get my $103 check and go home? So I'm still working to, I'll talk football with anybody, and to mentor them and try to say, you can go as far as you want doing this. And that just seems to be missing. And I think you and I have talked about that a couple times.
Well, the unfortunate part of it, and a big reason for that, is there's such a shortage of officials nationwide, really, that you need bodies. You need, hey, if you got a pulse, you're going to be working games. Yep. And unfortunately, sometimes you're thrown into varsity games before you're ready because there's such a shortage. So it's kind of a catch-22. You want guys to be hungry and pursue this thing. But at the same time, it's like, well, we need you. So come on. And we'll take whatever you got.
I had Luther, our assigner, share with me that he assigned a varsity game to an official who sent him an email back that says, I believe that that I can better serve at a different game. And meaning the game that he was assigned wasn't big enough. And Luther goes, what should I do? And I said, I'd take away his schedule. I'd take away the entire schedule. And it's somebody that I know that I care about, but I said, I'd take away the schedule. And Luther goes, well, unfortunately, I can't do that because I need him. And I go, that's why you're the assigner. I'm not anymore. But boy, we would, when you started, and even further back when I started, if you got an assignment at like Etiwanda High School in the afternoon and Los Altos in the evening, and for those that aren't aware, that's the two furthest points in our unit, you never questioned it.
Yeah.
You just got there as quickly as you can. Now you have people, well, I don't know if I can make it in time. And, but, I'm still working with those type of people, and I mean this when I sell them, this game that's going to be played, that's this kid's biggest game he's ever played.
Yeah.
And it should be the biggest game you've ever worked. Certainly the biggest game that night you'll ever work.
Oh, definitely. And there is a sense of entitlement. And the thing is, since I've become a civilian, off the field from officiating, like it's a perception that, we want Rio Hondo to have a great perception of our program. And unfortunately, when you see officials out there, I know in 2 seconds if a guy thinks this game is bigger than him or whatever. And so unfortunately for fans who aren't trained, they're to the naked eye, they see officials that they want to get mad at, and it's unfortunate that it's that way. So it's kind of a constant push. I'm trying my best to educate Rio fans, to be there for the coaching staff, as far as mechanics and rules and bad calls, good calls. But sometimes even me, I'm like, wait a minute, I can't defend any of this. And I also found out too, like, I haven't been in the rule book in a few years. I had to get back in the rule book and kind of re-educate myself on a few rules just to keep everyone sharp and to keep myself knowledgeable.
Well, there's a lot of guys that haven't been in the rule book for a couple of years, and unfortunately, they're on the field Friday night, and it does show. We had a game first week of the season that had 7 illegal kickoffs that weren't called, and I saw the film.
Wow.
Where the guy lines back 10 yards back, the 2 gunners, and gets that running start, and we had 7 of those. It wasn't called, and there's no excuse for that. The coaches didn't know the rules, but again, now when they go out the next week and that gets called by a different unit, the coach is going to say, we did this 7 times last week and there was nothing called. There's some things, you like you said, you just can't defend.
Yeah. Our signers always said, yourself included, do what is defensible. Do it, basically, if you're going to do something on the field, make a decision on the field, it better be supported by rule, or it better fit the game, or it better be something that the assigner and the powers that be can defend to the angry mob. So a little insight to officiating there. We'll definitely talk some more of that. But Tracy, first, for those that don't know, we got to go back in time to 19, whatever you want to call it. You are a former Boys Christian League member, someone that is played in what is now called Care Youth League, that is affiliated with Rio Hondo Prep. So what do you remember about those days way back when? Who were your peers? Who were your coaches? What was your experience like at BCL?
Matt, it had to be in like the, say, mid 60s. I'm going to say around maybe 65, 66. So I do forget when Boys Christian League opened up, but it had to be kind of in the infancy stages. And I can remember Mr. Ostergaard, was a big mover and shaker. He was the coach. I played on, and I remember I had my good friend Tom Marr on here a couple of weeks ago, but I played on Crystal. And I remember that I got to choose what number was going to be on my jersey. And so I played Little League, and my dad was the manager of my Little League team. I didn't get to choose what number I got, but at Boys Christian League, I did. I remember there were some guys that I went to high school with that I played with. I don't remember Tom Marr, but he brought up some names there that I do remember. And I remember playing basketball on the courts where I could touch the net. Now I think the baskets were probably 8 foot tall for us then. On there, and it was just truly good times. That bus would come pick us up, and I lived not too far away, but we would come down Live Oak Avenue, make the left turn on Farna, and you better be quiet. That was the quiet zone as we're going through there. And it was good times. I probably was there for about 2 years, and it was neat. There was a guy there that I don't know if you watch it, who I believe is still affiliated with it, Dave Reed, and his sister and my sister are still very good friends. And Dave and I have traded messages, through my sister, and he lived on the same street as I did, and I think he had is he still affiliated with Rio Hondo Prep?
he's still coaching in Cary. I think he's still coaching in Cary Youth League. I'm not sure, but he was doing something with the program, not necessarily Rio, but Cary Youth League for sure. One of our elder leaders, right? And someone that's been around a long time. I'll tell you this, Mr. Reed has always had just this energy about him. I knew him as a kid when I played against his Tiger teams, and a great devotional leader. I will say one of the top message deliverers to young kids and everything. So a lot of energy and passion for Mr. Reed over the years.
I heard after the fact when I did a playoff game at Rio Hondo Prep, and it was probably about 2010, 2011. And they announced the crew when they said referee Tracy McFate, and Dave, and I got this, I think, through his sister, wanted to come down and say hello, but he didn't want to disturb the officials or do anything like that. And I really wish, we had that opportunity to hook up. But, it was just, I have no bad experiences in boys Christian league. I really didn't. I think the school about that time was starting, and that might have been, say, a few years later, maybe around 1970 or something. I don't know when the school started on there. So it was a great. It had an impact on me during those years, no doubt about it.
Well, yeah, Rio was getting started there in, I think, 1966 or something along those lines. So yeah, your timeline is right on. Do you remember how you discovered Boys Christian League? I mean, you were in Little League, and then all of a sudden you're in this other sports league. Do you remember? Some kids have great stories, and sometimes it's just seeing a kid carry a bag or something. I want to go play where that kid's playing. Do you remember how you got started?
Yeah, I went to Plymouth Elementary School, which is right next to Annunciation Church on Longden, and the Little League Park is right there and everything. And I believe that there was like handouts, they're in the fourth grade or fifth grade or whatever classroom, that if you're interested, here's when we're going to have a meeting, or here's a number to call, or certainly wasn't any website to go to at that point. But so I think there was handouts at the school, and there was, maybe half a dozen kids that I went to school with that went to Boys Christian League, and we were all on, I believe we were all on Crystal, because I think that was done geographically, if I recall. On there, they worked with our schedules as far as if we were participating in anything else. And it was, I remember that we would play tackle football, and we had shoulder pads, we had a helmet, and we had a jersey, but our pants were like blue jeans. But that was okay for me. I think, it was more or less like, let's jump on his back and pull him down or something like that, or whatever. So that was my first taste, and I only did that for a year. Then I played with the Arcadia Pop Warner program.
Well, Tracy, Boys Christian League was among the first youth sports programs to play tackle football. So a little bit of history there. And yeah, I've seen photos of guys in blue jeans in games. It's that is confirmed. So absolutely.
Hey, if you see number 11 in a Crystal jersey, man, that might be me.
All right. I love it. Well, ones are wild. That's great stuff. Yeah, you're going to be the guy on top of someone, right? Not on the ground missing a tackle.
Hey, as long as I got credit for it and there was no huddle to go back and say, here's the technique you want to use. There was no helmet to helmet contact, I guarantee you there.
Yeah, that's for sure. So you went on to play high school football at Monrovia. Did kind of playing at BCL kind of light a fire that, man, I want to play this at another level? I mean, I feel bad for guys that don't get that high school football experience.
It really did. And my next level, like in the 7th and 8th grade, was with the Arcadia Pop Warner program, because Monrovia didn't have it. And there was Monrovia people playing with Arcadia people. And Arcadia was kind of dominant at the time, and they had some stud players that we were all friends with, Monrovia and Arcadia. But my first initiation was with Boys Christian League. And in the 7th grade and 8th grade, it was the Pop Warner program. And that's what it was called at the time, not Junior All-American.
Well, you've had some legendary playoff games officiating, but you talked about being at Rio Hondo. You've refereed at Anaheim Stadium, state games, championship games. But I was on a crew with you once where we got to officiate a first-round game at Monrovia High. And, if we didn't tell you, hey, kickoff's at 7, you'd still be giving us a tour of Monrovia High School. But that was a fond memory for me. But what about for you, going back to your alma mater and getting to work a playoff game?
You know what I did? And Bobby, this was after I was off the field, and they had built a new gym at Monrovia, but obviously the old gym is still there. The locker room was connected to the old gym. And Bobby Gordon was a referee. I think Jerry Robinson and Ray Herrera and Mario Huizar and Ruben Lopez were. So I got the janitor to open up the door to the old gym. There was only a couple lights on. And I go, hey guys, I want you to come over here. We went to the corner on the floor, and I said, this is where little Tracy McFate hit a 15-foot jumper against Arcadia High School to win the Pacific League championship and propel us into the playoffs. And all these guys are going, oh my gosh, that is terrific. And so they go in to get dressed, and Bob's right there. And Bob calls me T-Mac, and he goes, T-Mac. He goes, I didn't know you were a basketball star here. I go, Bobby, I never played basketball here, but these guys don't know it. And he just started laughing. But no, it was really it was really fun at that point. They were making a lot of changes around the campus and the whole bit, but it was really neat to go out. The athletic director there graduated 7 or 8 years after I graduated, but has been there ever since. And so there's still some connections there. We have my 50th year class reunion coming up in a couple of weeks, and it's the homecoming game and the whole bit. So we're going to go back on campus and tell everybody how great we were and all that kind of stuff. But that game, incidentally, that playoff game that I worked at Monrovia was maybe the one and only playoff game for Foothill Citrus that Sean Hockley worked.
That's right. Who's now a white hat in the NFL. Well, you worked with him one time and then another time with me. So I remember both of these games. But Sean, what an outstanding official. One of the best. You'll see him a white hat on Sundays. Great dude. Let me ask you, Tracy, because I know people are thinking right now, wait a minute, you went to the school and you're officiating the school. That's not right. Look, we're in a conspiracy theory world. By the way, Monrovia won both games by 50 points, so it didn't matter. But
running clock.
What? Yeah, definitely running clock. What do you make of officials maybe working at a school that they graduated from? It's someone will always have an excuse for whatever. For me, there was any kind of, we're going to make sure someone's going to win tonight. But to fans, if anyone found that out, they'd be like, wait a minute, this guy went to this school. You know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say?
If they're upfront with me and say, hey, I would really like to work a game at my alma mater or whatever, I'm going to have a conversation with them. And basically my question is there anything that can go wrong? Is there, do you still socialize with the coach or anybody there? And I want to put that, what's the onus on them? No, it's just, I want to go back there, whatever. And our good friend Vince Flores worked a game at Rosemead High School where he graduated, and he's got family up in the stands holding up signs, "We love the ref." And I go, well, maybe we shouldn't have done that, Vinny, but everything went okay. Some people say there's a 10-year rule and all that other kind of stuff. At the high school level, if the officials is going to tell me I have no problem doing that game, it would be great to do it, then I'm going to be okay with that. We did have somebody that graduated from either Chino or Don Lugo that walked into the pregame and told the referee that he went to school there 6 years earlier. And I was not happy with that. I just wasn't happy with that. But it's something that if the official says I have no bias, whatever, and I'm normally going to go along with that. I want to give whatever the official wants, if it's reasonable. I tried to accommodate as best I could.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's no conspiracy theory. It may not seem like it at times, but no refs are out there trying to make some other team win. If you took you could play this game forever. Wait, what high school did you go to? Oh, wait, they were rivals of that school. So you should, it's just, we're adults now, and maybe when you're on the school grounds or something, you think something different. But yeah, I wanted to get that out there so that people understand that does happen. It's rarely. I wouldn't say in the playoffs necessarily, just because again, anything that could possibly go wrong, you want to try to avoid. But Tracy McFate.
I did not stay out for the alma mater after the
No.
game, like that, and but if the official tells me, if I ask him why do you want to work that game, if they tell me, well, they're going to retire my jersey at halftime, well, maybe we need to get somebody else out there or something. Yeah. But yeah, we really haven't had, there's been a few issues that have come up, and I just tell the school, I'll make sure that doesn't happen again, because I hate to tell the school I was not aware of that issue, because that's that's something that I should be aware of.
Oh, for sure. And again, it's just the age we live in, and it's best to kind of make sure that some things don't happen just in case, because there's going to be plenty of bad officials that show up at your school and you're going to be mad at, and maybe you're like, why can't we get one of the alumni from the other school, So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. Tracy, as someone who's officiated a long time in the San Gabriel Valley and the Foothill Citrus unit, for those that don't know, it's basically east of the 605 freeway from Azusa all the way down to Hacienda Heights, Los Altos, Wilson, along the 60 and the 210, all the way out to the 15 freeway. That's kind of our big square, if you will. So 50 something schools in that unit. Rio Hondo Prep's on the west side of the 605. But as someone who's seen Charter Oak, Bishop Amat, South Hills, Glendora, all these great schools in the San Gabriel Valley, my question to you is this: Where do you think Rio Hondo Prep fits in the San Gabriel Valley? Are they just some small little school that people don't know where it is, or do they have a place really among the elites in the San Gabriel Valley?
They definitely have a spot there, and I think that if people want to come in and look at Rio Hondo Prep as that small little school, and that school that we're going to play before we play Temple City or something like that, it's proven that that's a mistake, because as evident last year in the first round of the playoffs with Charter Oak. And I'm a firm believer, when you play 48 minutes of football, the best team that has the most points at the end of the game, that's the best team, and it's certainly the best team that night. So what's happening with Rio Hondo Prep is not a fluke. I think that they've flown underneath the radar, and I, kind of pose this question on you. I kind of think Rio Hondo Prep likes flying underneath the radar, but I don't think they can do that anymore. When you talk about the elite programs in the area, you have to talk about Rio Hondo Prep. Those CIF championship banners that are hanging there, you didn't get those on Amazon. Those were earned. And I think that gets people's attention, and it should have gotten their attention a whole lot quicker. So you have continuity over there, and I think that's a common denominator with the schools that are among the elite. Yeah, it's not a flash in the pan, that's for sure.
No, I think it's been an established tradition. There's been a couple of down years, but not that many. You mentioned the game last year against Charter Oak. I would say the past 10 years, they've really made an effort to play some of these bigger schools and bigger programs. And this is something you can speak of from an assigner, and seeing some of these schools that don't have a lot of players. And I'm always like, Rio, year in and year out, is able to play an 11-man football team, at least a lower level and a varsity, with like 20 guys on each team. And yet some of these other schools, they'll always complain and cancel games because of numbers. I know you've seen plenty of that in your assigning time.
And it's getting more and more prevalent. Friday night, when we were out with the fellas after the game, I was talking to one of the officials that had the Azusa Workman game. That was a 70-0 ball game that Azusa won. And they said that Workman had, I think he said, either 16 or 18 players in uniform. And so that there's going to be a skill level difference on some of those players. But when there's two or three pick sixes, fumbles on the 5 yard line and those type of things, you're not running up the score. But I would imagine that every one of those kids at Rio, they've come up through the program, and they know the Rio way to play football. And there's a lot to be said, for those kids that have been with them, throughout their high school. They're not transferring 2 or 3 times or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say, in boxing, there's always a pound for pound list. What's the pound for pound ranking? You got your lightweights, your welterweight guys. He's never going to fight a heavyweight. But as far as if you took out the weights and it was just like, who are the best fighters pound for pound? Here's the list. Well, I feel that way with Rio Hondo. They're never going to be a heavyweight. Well, I won't say never, because the goal maybe someday is to be there. But
Sure.
I'd say pound for pound, the Rio program, I'd put it up against any program, definitely in the Valley, from a coaching standpoint, from a preparation, from how well the teams play and execute. I really do believe that. I'm a little biased, but that's why I wanted to get someone's opinion, maybe who could be unbiased.
I believe that Rio is probably one of the few schools in the last couple of years where the enrollment has gone up. I know that these schools, the Glendoras, the Charter Oaks, their enrollment is down. And they're going somewhere, and I would think that a Rio and or whatnot are on the rise as far as enrollment. Maybe not a great deal, but at least going in the right direction.
Well, when you go from 100 kids to 106, that's what is that? I don't know. I'm not good at math, but a 6% increase. That's huge. So yeah, it's growing and it's gonna get bigger, I think, over time. And that's kind of the point of the podcast too, is to help the program grow. And that'll help the school grow and just get our name out there, because your point is excellent about Rio does like to go under the radar. I look at them like a Boise State, a Fresno State,
Sure.
a team that'll play anyone anywhere. But it's kind of nice always being the underdog, even though Rio can step up and dominate occasionally too.
Oh, absolutely. Rio a couple years ago beat Arcadia. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, it's been a while, but 2012, I think that was.
But you look at them beating Arcadia, beating Arroyo, beating Charter Oak. When we talked a few minutes ago about established programs, every one of those is an established program. And so when they beat Charter Oak last year in the playoffs, it shouldn't be a stunner. And I was following that game here. I was following that game, as I shared with you, on Twitter, and whoever it was, James or Fred Robledo or whatever, but they were saying, here's a stunner at Charter Oak, upset in the making or whatever. And I'm going, oh man, how long are you going to say that? Because I'm pretty sure Rio's going to want you to keep saying that all along.
Oh yeah, I mean, the first game of the year, Tracy, El Monte walks on our field, and I was down in the corner, before the game, getting my podcast stuff ready. Their players look down at our guys and they start laughing out loud, like that's their team. And then we took it to them, and it's just like, Rio may not always deliver, but I would say the majority of the time they're going to step up to any challenge and at least compete in an intense, fiery way.
Well, I think you got all those kids on that team have the same goal. And I'm not sure when you get to the bigger schools, if all those players have the same goal, meaning winning this game, winning the league, winning the CIF championship. I think a lot of those kids, maybe they won't admit it, but maybe they got more individual goals on there. Whether they do or not, that certainly isn't the case from my perspective on Rio Hondo Prep.
Now talk to me as an assigner and an official, as someone who's officiated to playoff games at Rio in the past. I know they all kind of blend together, but also just the behind the scenes stuff, contacting schools for playoff games. You usually work schools that are not in your area, so that's always a challenge, just communication wise. From an assigner and officiating standpoint, playoff games and such, any experiences with Rio Hondo Prep?
The heaviest week of the year for any assigner, football assigner, is the first week of the playoffs. We generally would get 12 to 13 games. You have to put every one of those schools, more than likely, you have to put them into Arbiter. You have to manually assign the officials in there. My goal, I would get those games on a Sunday night, maybe around 7:30 at night. And my goal was to get those games out to the officials for Friday night's games, to get them out Sunday night before I go to bed. Sometimes it might be 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever. On Monday, I'm fielding phone calls from my referees and everything, but I need to call every one of those 12 or 13 schools to let them know who the officials are, to kind of touch base with them and make a contact. The elite type schools, and Rio Hondo Prep is certainly one of those. When you make that phone call, you get in touch with the right person right away, and they appreciate the phone call. We make sure that we're connected on Arbiter. Rio Hondo Prep, as with a couple of those schools, are going to tell you, okay, we'll have a guy at the parking lot that's going to check you in. You're going to park over here on the west side of our campus. We'll have somebody meet you at the locker room. The band will be will be off the field by 3 minutes before kickoff. And when you do that, you know that you're talking to people that know how to take care of their business. Mm-hmm. And I always look forward to that. I knew that I was not going to have to call that school back. We're done. We can check them off the list. And there's those type of schools. There's a type of schools where you have a new athletic director that's never dealt with this before. So you're walking them through the process. Okay, who are you again? I go, okay, I mean, our officials aren't going to work. No, it's not going to be, here's what's going to happen. Get them all set up. You spend some time, maybe a couple different phone calls. And I will tell you, and I'm going to name the school, but we had a game that was Elsinore at Alhambra. And I called up Alhambra, and about the third attempt, I got a hold of the athletic director, and I'm telling him, hey, here's the officials. Are you ready to take down the names? Do you have Arbiter? And the guy goes, hey, well, I'm really busy. And I go, by this time I've been on the phone for about 3 or 4 hours. And I said, hey, I'm pretty busy too. I go, but let's see if we can get this done. And so I try to find out, I go, where do you want the officials to park? And he said, they're going to park in the dirt lot. It's the public lot. I said, well, that's not going to work. I said, we need an area where we can park, because we're not going to park among the public. And he goes, that's all we got. So I said, okay, let me move on to the next one. I says, will you have them in the women's coach's office, the men's coach's office? What? He goes, we don't have any room. We don't have any room set aside for the officials. They just show up on the field. And he goes, he says, Terry, I'm really busy. I go, well, the name's Tracy. And I said, but we really need to get this squared away. And he goes, hey, can you give me a call back later? He goes, I got a meeting to go to, and I really don't have time for this. So hung up the phone, and I'm saying, this is not my first rodeo. I was pissed. So I called up Glenn Martinez, who I had a good relationship, the assistant commissioner in the CIF office, explained to him what had happened. And Glenn kind of laughed, and he said, I'm going to call over to Alhambra right now, and you let me know if everything works out okay. So Glenn called him up, and Glenn told him, he says, I know you're really busy, so this is going to be a short phone call because I'm really busy too. He says, I need you to answer a question for me, whether you're going to have a dedicated parking lot for the officials and a room for them to change and to have their pregame meeting. And before you answer, my next phone call will be to Elsinore High School to let them know they're going to be hosting the game instead of Alhambra. So how do you want to work this out? And so the guy goes, well, we'll figure something out, or whatever. And he goes, okay, I want you to call Mr. McFate. And so about 10 minutes later, I get a phone call from the guy at Alhambra High School. And he said, Terry, this is so-and-so at Alhambra High School. And I said, it's still Tracy. And he goes, I didn't know you were going to go over my head. And I pretended like I didn't hear him. I said, are you ready to take down some information? And we got all this, and this guy was pissed. And I just told him, I go to you, and I go, have a great day. And the referee, do you remember Kid Mikolasco?
Oh yeah, no nonsense.
Kid Mikolasco was the referee of that game. And I gave him a heads up. And Ken came from that area a few years earlier, the San Gabriel area. And he goes, I will be ready for that guy. And anyway, so you get those guys that just kind of make life, kind of tough for you. But when you deal with the Rio Hondo preps, and when you make that one phone call and they tell you to have a nice day and we're looking forward to our game and those type of things, you're dealing with people that have good people skills. They've done this before. And they know how to, run a game day operation.
Yeah, if you want to be treated like a big time program, you need to act like one. Behind the scenes, there's so many things that add up to how you do things and operate. That's an outstanding story. And I know the former athletic director, Ken Drain, always did a great job in that. And now it's Coach Carson who's doing things, and other people help out. That's one of the beauties of a football game on Friday nights is you show up. It's the most crowd you're going to get on a non-school event, and everyone's doing something. The snack bar, the officiating room, the laying out the pylons. Like, it takes so many people to really make a program, the perception of the program at least, top notch.
There's a lot to be done, and we appreciate all of that. I mean, and when you can make your part as smooth, efficient, and quick as possible, the school appreciates it. We appreciate it. And the whole bit. I can't tell you how many playoff games I've worked where we're ready to start the game and we don't have a chain crew. Come on. Come on.
We were in the Rose Bowl a couple years ago, Tracy, against Pasadena Poly, and Poly was like, "Oh yeah, we're the home team. We need chain people." And the Rio Hondo people, they stepped up. Yeah, we got it. The Charter Oak game, Tracy, I'm not lying. The chain crew for the Charter Oak game at Charter Oak was the Rio Hondo chain crew. They said, "We don't have a chain crew. Can anyone volunteer?" All 4 guys of the Rio chain crew stepped right up. And I'm like, what is going on with the level of the program? That speaks volumes, and we haven't even kicked off yet.
Obviously, I would say that's unbelievable, but really my comment is that is not acceptable. It just isn't acceptable.
You want to have a football program or not? That's very, very well said. Man, yeah, that's great. So this is why I wanted to bring you on, kind of some insight into there to talk about, because you've seen it all on and off the field. Trying to remember. Yeah, we already talked about the playoff game. You worked, Tracy, kind of getting away from high school ball for a minute. You're someone that worked at a pretty high level, Division I football in college. Do you have any stories for the listeners out there? Anything funny, anything controversial that happened to you at the Division I college football level?
It was at Boise State, and get ready to tell your producer to hit the dump button here. But if you remember, they had a rule that everybody had to wear socks that were the same height. Okay. And they made us to be the fashion police. And what we would do, the offensive lineman that was 6'7", 360, his socks had to come up as high as the 165-pound receiver. So what we would do is we would go out before the game, and we would make a list of all the players that weren't legally equipped. And we would hand it to the equipment manager and say, "Hey, these guys don't have legal socks or knee pads or whatever." And I remember the guy at Boise State, we handed that list to him, and he looked us right in the eye, tore it up, and put it in his pocket, and said, "Don't worry the F about how we're dressed. When we kick off, we'll be properly dressed. Now, do you have something else to do?" And I'm thinking, there's 30,000 people here. This is a big game, and I just got schooled by an equipment manager. And so that might have been the last time our crew ever went and talked to an equipment manager. We'd wait till game time if somebody wasn't dressed right or whatever. Yeah. But that's a guy who knew how those guys should be dressed, and when they're in pregame warmups, he didn't care.
So many little things that, like, we have to worry about this. Come on, man. I don't want to worry about this. I got, it's hard enough officiating this game. What about, I know you had some interaction with Jim Harbaugh when he was the head coach down at the University of San Diego.
Jim Harbaugh, when he was the head coach at the University of San Diego, my umpire, who you know, Alicia Tula, great guy, great friend of mine. We go out an hour and 15 minutes. And if you remember, you walk down that ramp at San Diego, and Coach Harbaugh, they had their early outs. He was standing all by himself, leaning up against the very far goalpost. And so now we make the trek all the way over there, and he wasn't quite as legendary as he is now, but he had his khakis on and his USD shirt and the whole bit. We walk over there and he's got his hands in his pocket, and I stick my hand out and I say, Coach Tracy McFate, and he interrupted me. He goes, I'm not going to shake your hand. I may have a cold. And I go, oh, we're doing some gamesmanship here. So, okay. So we made the conversation very, short. My thing is, what do I need to know about USC to properly officiate this game? And, he told me a couple things he had and all that kind of stuff. And, and we left, and either I said it, and it was probably me, or Elise said it, but we go, what a prick. So anyway, the game starts and they have their quarterback, I think his name was Josiah Johnson, but he played actually backed up in the NFL for a while with the Bengals and a couple of other teams. And so he drops back, and I'm the referee. He drops back, throws a little dump off screen pass that goes for about 12 or 15 yards. But right after he throws it, he trips over his feet and falls down. And Harbaugh looks at his card and to see my name, and he goes, come on, McFate, dadgummit, you got to protect my quarterback. Well, nobody touched him. Absolutely nobody touched him. So I go up to the quarterback, and we're going upfield, and I kind of put my arm around his waist. I go, hey, when you go off, you got to tell your coach what happened. And he looked at me and smiled, and he goes, I can't do that. And I go, okay. But one of the best interactions I had was actually a Division III game. Occidental had a quarterback that was a transfer from University of Oregon named Andy Collins. And what's really, that's kind of a sad ending. Andy married a sportscaster from Oregon, and on his honeymoon, he passed away on a treadmill. But now to go back, he was dominant. They did not lose a game for 2 years, went into the Division III playoffs or whatever. And I had them about 3 times. We had a pretty good relationship. The head coach there was a great guy, Dale Wildoff and everything. But he dumps off again a little screen pass on about his own 15-yard line, and the running back goes 85 yards for a touchdown. And so we're running upfield, and I never done this before, but I go, we're right next to each other, kind of in front of his bitch. And I go, Andy. And he looks at me, and I go, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. He goes, what? And I said, tomorrow morning, people are going to pick up the newspaper, and it's going to say, Collins, 85-yard touchdown pass. And he pats me on the head, and he goes, man, this is a great game. And, so when you have those are the kind of things that you always remember. I've had some run-ins, as you know, that didn't turn out good, where you try to, flush those away as quickly as possible. But you can be successful in doing this with good people skills. That requires an effort. That requires surrounding yourself around good people, and just kind of being in tune with what's going on around you. And I think a lot of that's missing today.
Yeah, it's so funny, and you know what's, it's getting more difficult because we're in this social media age. We don't talk to people, we text people, right? We don't experience things with people. We take a photo and we send it to them, and it's the communication factor is so big. Yeah, coaches at the higher levels, they work hard at this. Officials, though, like, it's so weird to me. Guys can't look a coach in the eye and have a conversation with them or respond to their challenge. And likewise, coaches, sometimes they're just venting out loud, which they do, but there's also times you got to calm yourself, look a referee in the eye, say something, try to not let the emotions get too high. But I do think communication in all aspects of life, but especially football, has diminished a bit because of technology and the age we're in.
I had no room for assistant coaches during the game. And I would And I think I had a reputation with the head coaches that I can communicate with you all the time.
Mm.
And, our friend Tom Marr was a perfect example for that, with one exception, and he took care of it. My interaction with the PCC sidelines in the many games that I worked was always with the head coach. And I would always tell the head coach, we're going to communicate with you. I go, but just you. And it would be that way all the way. And I did that even as my career was starting. I think I shared this with you, but I was working El Camino, great head coach named John Featherstone.
Love
And
Featherstone.
he came up to me. I was a head linesman. It was at Long Beach. And he said, if you have any issues, please come directly to me. And I had an assistant coach that was just riding my ass. I mean, he was riding my butt. And I was new to the college game, and I had about as much as I wanted to take. So I went up to him. I said, Coach, I said, I know you want to communicate just, you and me. I said, but you have an assistant coach down here who's very close to costing you 15 yards. He didn't storm down the field. He walked down to the assistant and he goes, Bill, you were in my office last week wanting to know why you can't get a head coaching job. And he said, that's why. And he turned around and walked away, and never heard another word from the guy again.
That's Coach Featherstone.
And that's the head coach taking care of business.
Yeah,
and I appreciate that. Now, if I get an offensive line coach that comes up to me in the second quarter and says, hey, my right tackle's been called 3 times for holding, can you tell me what he's doing so we can correct that? I have absolutely no problem with that. Sure. But you get the assistant coaches that'll say something and then walk away. And if you recall,
sniper shot. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you recall, we had a guy that they won the game, and I won't say the high school, but it was just a couple of years ago, where assistant coach waited until there were zeros on the clock, and he just ripped the officials. And we did a post-game ejection. Mm-hmm. And I told the referee who called me about it, I said, we can do a post-game ejection, but if we do it, you need to follow through, but I'll get the ball rolling on it. And I said, we're just not going to do that. And, the head coach called me, who I know, apologized. He goes, can we do something to rescind this? He goes, I wasn't aware of it. And I go, no, I go, not now. I go, I understand that. But he goes, well, if I promise to put him up in the press box, can we get him back? Because he's our offensive coordinator. I said, go ahead and put him up in the press box next week. But, and so again, it's the leadership from the coaching staff that comes around.
Well, I know there are consequences for actions, and this is something that fans need to be aware of. We all yell at referees. It's just part of the business, but there are certain behaviors like that are unacceptable. When I was a basketball official, I post-gamed a coach who chased me out of the gym, and he ended up missing his 40-year, retirement game or whatever it was. And so that's a whole other story.
Yes, I do remember
that. Matt, do you want to take this back? I'm like, no, he chased me out of the gym. What do you want me to do? Yeah. So there's things that happen, and from an officiating standpoint, there have been inexcusable, indefensible actions that happen. We don't need to go into details, but as far as discipline of officials, that does happen, right? When an officials, they have a 5th down in a championship game or something of that nature.
Absolutely.
The officials are suspended or do not work that game the next year or something. That does happen, right?
Absolutely. And in our thing in the playoffs, and I have a good idea when the playoffs start, just about who's going to work the finals for us. But I had a rule that if you're working the playoffs and you have an inadvertent whistle, we've all had them. I probably had more inadvertent whistles than anybody around, and actually even had one in a D1 college football game. But if you have an inadvertent whistle in the first round of the playoffs and you're a 3rd round official, you're not going to go out in the 2nd round. And it's not a punishment, but it's a reward for those guys that didn't have that happen to. Doesn't mean you're a bad official, but you can't continue in the playoffs if you've had that. And that has happened. I had an official targeted for a semifinal game my last year as a signer that showed up late for a playoff game, meaning, maybe 45 minutes before kickoff. He was done. Mm-hmm. And again, the word came out that that I was a jerk and all that other kind of stuff. But when those assignments go out to the other schools, that's coming from me. It's not coming from anybody else. I'm the one that they're going to call. And it damaged the friendship to this day. I'm kind of okay with that. But how can I tell somebody you're going to stay home, but this guy that had an inadvertent whistle is going to keep going on?
True.
And but it has happened where we've had, another unit. If you remember, we talked about the Diamond Bar Upland game where, they got a 5th down, and it's not even a question mark that they have a 5th down. There's got to be a check and balance there somewhere that stops that from happening. And in that particular game, it didn't happen.
In that game, that was, I think, 99, 98, 99, because I remember the guys
99.
99 yeah. In a CIF final when Diamond Bar was really good and Uplands had great success, and a 5th down in the championship game. Yep. The crew ended up missing playoff games the next year, the entire unit, I believe. But what was funny is they played each other again the next year in the semifinal. And usually this doesn't happen, where the 2 schools from the same unit can request, or did at this time, the officials from their own unit to come do the game. Usually you get a unit in the playoffs from neither of the 2 schools, right? An outside unit. Well, correct. In this case, you guys, the CIF made an exception, and the Foothill Citrus crew came into that game. Very anticipated Diamond Bar Upland game, and you were on that game. I was actually in the stands watching this game long before I ever became an official.
I did work that game. I was a back judge. My good friend Rich Riley was the referee, and he was wound pretty tight. Joe Bernansky, Al Corey, and Pete Gotro were on the game. And what I remember about that game is I remember driving to the game on the 57 freeway going to Fullerton, and the lights were on at Diamond Bar High School. And I go, oh, that's just whatever. And we get there, and we're on the field, and there's no Diamond Bar High School, and no Diamond Bar High School at all, and all this other kind of stuff. They show up probably 7 or 8 minutes before kickoff. Well, we got to talk to the coach. Well, Coach Roach was in no mood to talk. And so, we asked him, do you have anything unusual? No, let's play football. And so anyway, they stop Upland. Upland punch to him. Diamond Bar gets the ball. They have a formation where the center is on the end of the line with an eligible number. So he's eligible by position, but they didn't have enough ineligible numbers.
Yeah.
So what I remember is first play, Pete Gotro throws the flag, 5-yard penalty. Well, illegal formation. Well, they don't change anything. Second play throws it. So Roach calls timeout, and all 5 officials, he is ranting and raving and all that kind of stuff. And Rich was pretty tight. And so we told him, here's what you got to do to make that eligible. And you should know that we're in the middle of December here. He took his, and this picture, Matt, was in the newspaper. He threw his folder down on the ground. And I stepped forward and I said, pick it up. And an assistant coach went to pick it up. And I said, no, Coach Roach will pick it up. And he looked at me and picked it up. And then I looked at Rich. I said, timeout is over. Let's play football. And Upland totally dominated the team that game. And Upland was the better team on that. Yeah. And they were just trying to do some gamesmanship. It was oh gosh, yeah, that place was full and the whole bit. But yeah, that was
for sure. That's great stuff. I love stories like this. I could talk for hours. We'll maybe do one more. But yeah, the intensity of the game. The referees go to the coach before the game, each side, and they ask them, "You got anything, significant tonight you're going to run or do?" And it is up to the coaching staff to inform the referees. For instance, a trick play. If you got some type of trick play plan, it would be good for the officials to know, not to give anything away, but number one, just to confirm that it's legal. And then number two, the last thing the officials want is something surprising. And when you do see a trick play of some kind, it is up to the offensive or whoever's running the offensive team, whoever, they have to execute that perfectly. from a rules standpoint, because that's just a philosophical thing. Anything that is out of the ordinary needs to be executed. So that is a big reason the coaches talked before the game, and Coach Roach did not do that night.
My philosophy is never put us in a position where we have to make a decision, because if we do, if you put us in that position, you're probably going to not going to like the decision. And we know at least half the people won't like that decision. So because you do that in the pregame and they tell you that formation, we say, well, that's not legal. But if you do this, you can make that formation is now legal. Oh,
There you
go. You know, can I throw a forward pass behind the line of scrimmage and then throw another forward pass? No. But if you throw a lateral or a backward pass, you can now throw a forward pass. Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, thanks. You know, and those things are kind of basic that they should know. But
yeah, for sure.
you know, I always try to say, here's what you can do to make this legal, or here's why it's illegal, or whatever. But you can't do that when the stands are full in the 6 minutes before kickoff.
For sure. Well, the last story, speaking of Charter Oak Rio Hondo, the big game last year, the late great Lou Farrar wasn't around for that one, but his son was the head coach, Dominic Farrar, who is the athletic director still, I think. You had a funny story, and it was a quick one. But when Coach Lou Farrar was the head coach, he didn't like a call you made, and during a timeout, you had a one-liner that sent Dominic Farrar, who was an assistant coach, just into laughter. And I thought the audience would like to hear that story.
It was such a one-sided game. I mean, it was a 30-point ball game, and it was maybe a PI call from the back judge or whatever, and he took a timeout, and I go, unbelievable. What, can we not get this thing over? And Lou was such a great guy. He'd be out on the field and he'd have his hands like, oh my gosh, they just shot the president or something, you know? And so I'm going over there to see, and I have kind of a smile on my face. And he goes, there's no way that that's PI. And I looked at him and I go, and again, I normally don't use the first names. I go, Lou, you got 45 seconds to change my mind. And Dominic was right behind him, and Dominic had to take a couple steps back because he was laughing so hard. And Lou looked over his shoulder and saw Dominic. Then he looked back at me, and he goes, "Okay, I'm done." And he was, man. There's a short list of really great guys, and he was one of them. And we had so many discussions during the entire year, you know, I mean, where we would talk and you know, I remember running into him at Lalto Tech, and I think I ended up getting my food boxed up to go because we talked so long. But just great. And Dominic is just like him. Dominic is a guy probably a lot like Rio Hondo Prep. He truly cares about the kids. Mm-hmm. He wants to win every game, and he's a competitor, but he truly cares. And you know, so but yeah, that must have been two teams that game where everybody's on their best behavior. I would guess. I would hope.
For sure. Oh, well, if you're in charge, of course they were. Well, great story.
I mean, when last year Rio Hondo Prep and Charter Oak.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was intense. It was physical, but you know, not too many bad blood or anything. Both teams wanted to win, and it really did make that game that much sweeter. You know, beating an elite program like Charter Oak, and they're having a great year this year. Maybe one day down the road, we shall meet again. But that night, Rio trailed by 1 point for exactly 1 minute of that game, and it was not a fluke. One of the best wins in school history. Absolutely. Thank you, Tracy, for all of the words of wisdom and the fun stories and your perception of Rio Hondo Prep football, because I do know fans like hearing from the outside world, even though way back when you were a Boys Christian League member.
It goes back a ways.
Thanks so much, Tracy. We'll chat soon, and enjoy the rest of the football season, man.
My pleasure. We'll see you at Christmas.
Absolutely. It's on. All right, Tracy McFate, always a pleasure chatting with you, my friend. I could talk for hours, but we'll keep it to just the 1 hour here on the podcast. It's been a very busy day for me, recording all kinds of things in preparation for next week and beyond. So, yeah, I think we'll call it quits early here. Please follow the Charge to Keep podcast wherever you can. This special edition with former referee Tracy McFate was all my pleasure and something very new and unique. And I can't say too many other podcasts are having officials on their podcasts at the high school level, high school football podcasts that are having opposing coaches on here. So we're doing some things here that I think are unique. And I don't know if you guys find interesting or not. It's trial and error. But you know what? I thought, why not? Let's try something new. At least chat some football with my very good friend, Tracy McFate, and former Boys Christian League member. That was a lot of fun. Guys, continue to support this podcast wherever you can. Tell a friend, phone a friend, if you will. Tell them about the YouTube channel, the Facebook, Instagram, Twitter pages. We have an email address. If you want to send us in a notification or send us in a message, voice message, email, look at the episode notes. There's details there where to reach us. We'd love to hear from you guys, just like you hear from us here on the Charge to Keep podcast weekly during the football season. Big plans ahead for the off season, but not so fast, my friend. Still plenty of football left here in the regular season and beyond. Rio Hondo Prep Football returns Thursday night, Care Park against Viewpoint in the league opener for the Gold Coast League match, Gold Coast League teams, that is Viewpoint, Brentwood, Campbell Hall, and Rio Hondo Prep. Only 2 of those teams can get into the postseason. So every game counts from here on out, much like they have the first 7 weeks of the season. Your Rio Hondo Prep Kares 6-0 take on Viewpoint this Thursday night. Can't wait for that. Thank you, Tracy McFate. That was fun. Guys, we'll be here on Sunday with a game recap. Our first recap in 3 weeks since the Savannah Rebels got taken down by these one and only Kares a few weeks ago, last month in exact order there. So we'll be back with Coach Carson, a player and a former member of the alumni, a current member of the alumni, a former player, I should say. So 3 great guests on our Sunday recap episode. You don't want to miss it. We're back into full swing. We're back into our regularly scheduled programming, a pregame show 24 hours before kickoff, and then a game recap show Sundays with Coach Carson, a player and a member of the alumni. I'm excited. Let's go. Let's get it going. Sorry for the longest show today, guys. It probably would have been even more hours had I not put a stop to it here. Tracy McFate, you're the man. Guys, I will see you Thursday night at Care Park. Get out to the game. Only 2 home games left. Which one are you going to go to? You going to come to both? I suggest you do. If not, check us out on the NFHS network. Kyle Horton and Clark Bollinger will bring the game to you, your living room, your phone, your tablet, wherever you would like to watch comfortably from for Rio Hondo Prep football. All right, I'm out of ideas, out of breath, out of time. It's time to move on. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week after our Sunday recap show. But guys, as always, this is a kind, friendly reminder that we always want to be gracious. Let's see, humble in victory, gracious in defeat, because we always have a charge to keep.
A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fit it for the sky. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live. And, O thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give.